Hi, everybody. Welcome. Ben, we're live.
Oh no. Oh no. Hey, if you guys can hear us, jump into the chat and tell us what's happening, what's going on, where you at, who are you, that kind of thing.
Maybe we're not. I'm not seeing anyone chat in. Oh, yeah, I am. Here we go. Wow. Boston, Jacqueline's here.
Mary in Chicago.
Madison, Chicago.
Keegan in Alaska. I like it. Laura in New Jersey, welcome. That's awesome. Erica in Phoenix. Hi, Erica. Bree, Dallas.
Keller Williams, East Side. Woo!
Spencer in Tacoma. Kim Sutton, my friend, welcome on the call. Pretty awesome. And we'll get started in just a second. We're just hearing from you guys as you chat in here. The Ribble Group in Colorado, part of our master class. Good to see you all.
Hey, Ben, while everyone's logging on, I'd love to, before I toss it over to you, this is our leadership mentoring program, everybody. And if you're not an actual member of this, we would love to have you join us. The name of our Facebook group is Ben Kinney Leadership Mentoring Program. You can request to join that. And we don't just have these webinars once every month or so. We have a really great discussion on our Facebook group. And every time we do a Ben Kinney Companies event, we typically have a meetup. We have happy hours. We've had a breakfast. And we might even convince our events team to start giving us some special seating. They're going to kill me for saying that right now. My phone will blow up with our events team. But the point is that it's getting to be a really cool, active group, and we'd love to have you guys in it.
And we're sharing some of our leadership YouTube videos and some of our other content that we're exclusively making. So you'll see that showing up there in the Facebook group. Another minute and we'll be getting started. Since you guys are warming up and learning how to use chat, why don't you guys put into the chat box what you're hoping to get out of today's call? What are you hoping to get out of today's call in our lessons from today? What are you hoping to get out of it? Type that into the chat box for us.
Get my glasses on. I'm seeing Lindsay Soprani on here. Jolene and I are going to be on Lindsay and Christy's podcast tomorrow. At what time is that, Lindsay? I think it's at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Oh, Bob.
Bob Stewart, this is one of them right here. This is one of them. This is one.
Oh,
of them.
I know why you wore that shirt. I know that shirt. I know that story.
We'll talk about that today.
Hey, Ben, one of the audience questions we got, and it was from Jolene. She asked it earlier this week. She wanted to know, and you can wait till the opportune time or answer now. She wanted to know what your favorite road trip song was and how many times you played it over again.
Oh, that's funny.
It is funny.
That's funny because Jolene knows that I put a song on repeat all the time, and I play.
I do too. Yep.
Jolene and Aaron want to jump out of the window.
You, me, and Abe Shreve used to text our repeat songs to each other because we all do that.
Yeah, love Abe, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, as we're getting started, thank you guys for joining us on another one of our leadership mentorship programs. I feel like I should add another ship to that last word there. It's a lot of ships right here, but V and I came together about 9 months ago and said, let's just get everybody together and share some of our lessons of the journey every so often, and bring in other guests and just openly share and not have any other alternative purpose, but just helping us on this journey of growth and leadership. And what you'll find as you get to know us, because V is very transparent and I'm very translucent, you can tell by my tan, that the journey is not easy for anybody. And when you start thinking the journey is actually easy, you're just putting yourself in harm's way. Or when you think in other people's journeys are easy and you got it bad, it's just not real. It's one of the reasons why I love listening to podcasts like How I Built This. Via was you hear about somebody like Sarah Blakely, who I'm a big fan of, who's the founder of Spanx and first female billionaire in the United States that didn't inherit it from a previous family business. And she sold fax machines door to door on her journey to build that company. And most people build a business for 7 to 10 years. And then all of a sudden people look up and they say, look at how successful that person is. They did it out of nowhere, but they don't realize it was 7 to 10 years of building up before they got to that point. And along that journey, our energy and our attitude and our success and our leadership, it goes a lot like this, which will kind of start off the conversation with us today via about a road trip that I took.
Yeah, let's jump in on that. So so for all of our new guests, because we had a really high number of new registrations, Ben Kinney is one of the most successful founders in the real estate space. He owns the Ben Kinney Companies, which is a
shitty name for a business, but it's all we could think of that day.
He said it, not me. And so it's a huge portfolio of real estate assets. We have brokerages, we have teams, we have a tech all related to the real estate space. We've got a coaching company, we've got an events and training company, we have mortgage, title, escrow. And I am the general manager of the brokerages and help the leadership team of our ancillary services, which is our mortgage, title, and escrow, and in other areas of the business. And Ben and I have known each other a while now, 6, 7, 8 years now. And I started off as an agent in one of his offices and now work alongside him. So I go way back with Ben. And I watched Ben build his empire. I kind of came in the beginning stages of it. So when I started working for Ben about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and come about the spring, Ben, I'm going to toss this back to you. Come about spring this year. And I should preface it by saying I love working with Ben. Ben Kinney is, if any of you guys are looking for leadership opportunities, pretty much the best leader I've ever worked for. So I love working with Ben. And come springtime, now this is a real conversation. You told me nothing was off limits, remember?
Oh.
Things were getting a little dicey, Ben, my friend. You and I had a couple disagreements. There was a couple times where I wanted to punch you in the throat. and I'd love to kind of start there with what was kind of going on in your world in the spring, early summer leading into this. How busy were you?
Gary Keller talked a lot about how balance is a myth. And we don't really have balance truly. Balance is a process. It's not a state. You don't stay in balance. What happens is that you try to balance. And for the first part of this year, I was not in balance. And the effects of that was I gained a bunch of weight. I wasn't sleeping well. My body was hurting. I was bringing stress and things into the office, and I wasn't making progress on the things that are important to me. So I doubled down on work and to move some big projects through the door, launching some new companies and getting the ships in the right direction and dealing with the changes that happened. And it just took a toll on me. And I remember I got home one night and I just realized that I wasn't super happy. You can have all the money in the world and you could buy anything you want and take any vacation you want and get your job title, get the business card and get the recognition and the trophy or whatever that is. But at the end of the day, that doesn't make you happy. So I got to the point where I knew something had to change. And I've been thinking about making a change and doing something different. And it showed up in the weirdest of ways on July 8th.
Okay, so we're going to walk through July 8th. So it's July 8th and all that's happening, right? We're setting the stage. And you're in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, right?
Yep.
and you're solidifying a deal that you can say now it's public, right?
Yep.
With Debbie DeGroat, you launched Forward Coaching, and after months and months of working on that, you guys culminated that, and it's about 8:00 at night. Walk us through what happened next.
Yeah, so I decided that I was going to offer a coaching solution to our Brevity customers and to the agents in our world and to mortgage people and title and real estate and so on. And I realized that I'm a good mentor, but I haven't become masterful at coaching yet. And so I called my coach, and I called the original person who had helped Julian and I build the team, and her name was Debbie DeGroat, and she had worked for the Mike Ferry organization and the MAPS and built a big coaching company with 20 plus coaches herself. And I said, Debbie, I got a crazy idea. We should launch this coaching company. And it was one of a couple of projects that we were working on. But it all fit into this puzzle piece that I have. Like, I think about technology or business or all these different things that we're working on is they end up being like a gym membership, Vija. And the gym membership is you walk in and there's all these different things going on, but it doesn't mean you're going to be successful. And what I think is successful is when you go to a spin class and you have all the people around you and you have a person leading you and you have a specific plan and music and everything playing. Or you go into a CrossFit program and you go in and you look at the wall and it says you got to do 14 burpees and 13 push-ups and you got to sprint for 34 seconds and you got to do a pull-up and you got to do this stuff, and then you repeat it and do it 4 times. When you're done, you win. That combination of coaching plus technology or coaching plus business or all those things together is what makes success. So anyway, I worked for many months on this, and I got done, and Debbie and I signed this agreement to partner and fold our training and coaching companies together. And I was driving to the freeway, and as I was driving to the freeway, it was about 8 p.m. in Idaho, which is right on the border of Washington. And I thought to myself, hey, if I turn left, I'm going to get up here to I-90. I'm going to turn left, and when I turn left, I'm going to be sitting in there for 3 or 4 hours. And I'm going to get home at like midnight. And I'm driving up to I-90, and I get to I-90, and I turned right instead. And I started going on I-90. And for those of you guys who don't know what I-90 is, I-90 basically goes from the Pacific Ocean east to the Atlantic Ocean. And I didn't know where I was going to go, but I started driving, and I went right. And I ended up in Missoula, Montana as my first stop. And I didn't know if I was going to be gone a day or 2 days or 3 days or what. I just knew that I needed a break. And many of you on the call, you guys have probably gotten to that point where you needed a break and something had to change. What I didn't realize was it was going to be the break that I needed to change a lot of things in my life, which is kind of what we're going to talk about today.
So had you thought about doing this before? Because I'm intrigued by this. I mean, in the back of your mind, was there anything in the back of your mind where you kind of knew that you were going to be gone a few months?
No. I imagine like faking my death all the time and moving to Costa Rica and selling watermelons on the beach or like,
exactly. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah.
I had daydreamed about it, but I never really planned for it. And I didn't plan for it so much that when I turned right, I didn't have any clothes or underwear or any of that kind of stuff. And I was in my truck, and if I could have drove across the U.S., I probably would have took my car because it's faster and more gas efficient and not as loud, But I was in my Ford 150 driving right across the United States.
So in the moment that you turned right, what was because I want to drill down on this a little bit before we dive in, because I'm fascinated. I have always, you guys chat in, I have always fantasized about doing this. Has anyone here had this thought, like, what if I just didn't drive home? What if I just kept driving? Because I have, for sure. And what's intriguing is every mom ever, Jordan, sister, yes, Jordan wins today, flat out. So absolutely, and you did it. And so I really want to know, like, was it exhilaration? Was it like resignation? Was it freedom? Was it fear? What was going through your head? Well, actually, what was going through your heart?
I had came into my CFO and president's office, Ross Clausen, and I walked into Ross's office and I said, Ross, and this is the saddest thing you could hear me say. I said, Ross, I hate my life.
Oh.
And I just said, I hate my life. And this is not what I imagined it to be. And you could just see Ross's face, like, that's like the worst thing that anybody could ever say. And I didn't mean it so much that I hated every aspect of my life, because there's a lot of great parts of my life, but I hated the direction of where my life was going. And I just knew that I had to make a change. Like, either I had to just tell everybody that I quit and go sell watermelons, or I had to make a change and come back to be the person that my dreams require. And I didn't know how long that was going to take. So
Ben, what direction was it going in that you didn't like?
Oh, not sleeping, work. We talk about God in minutes a lot, Via, but I was coming to the office every day, and it would be 6 or 7 p.m. at night by the time the last person left my office. And I had a line of people there all the time. And it's because everybody would walk by and they would say, do you got a minute? And God in minutes were eating my freaking soul alive. I was trying to solve everybody's problems in the world. And then at 6 or 7 p.m., I had to start on my work. And I had my own work to do to move the companies forward and respond to people and so on. And that was going until midnight or 1 or 2 or whatever. And, and I would make bad eating decisions, and I'd be too tired to exercise, or I would be too burned out, or I would spend my weekends napping and instead of doing anything else, because I left it all on the table. And what I realized was I was actually becoming what I hate, which is busy and not productive.
All right. So I do want you to walk us through the trip next. And what I'd love you to weave in, Ben, is at what point did you realize you were going to be gone for a while? So walk us through. So you turn right and you went to, where do you say, Missoula?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to Missoula, and my friend, I have a friend there named Jason Baker, and Jason ended up not being there. He was in Vegas. So I was like, maybe Jason and I could go fishing, but then Jason bailed on me and left. No, he had plans. He was at an event, and he said, I'll fly back. I'm like, no, you keep going. So Jason wasn't there. I'm like, well, I'm going to go to Bozeman, because Bozeman has the Museum of the Rockies, which has all these dinosaur fossils. I'm a big nerd. I like fossils and Yellowstone and art and that kind of stuff. So I went to Bozeman, and I bought a piece of art, a David Yarrow photograph of a polar bear. You guys should look him up sometime. David Yarrow is an amazing photographer. And I went to the museum, and I went fly fishing with a friend of mine there. And but the rivers were kind of flooding, and it wasn't great fly fishing. So I'm like, well, I'm going to keep going. So I kept going, and I ended up in Billings, and then I ended up. I was in this. I like to take, like, not the main road sometimes. So I took a side road through. Ended up in this area called Lame Deer, Montana. And if you ever want to get super freaked out, just go Google Lame Deer, Montana murders, and you'll see like this long list of, like, it's a unfortunately poor and semi-dangerous place. And
sidetrack, I'm intrigued that you would actually Google that. Move on.
Okay, yeah, there's a story around that. But anyway, so I'm going through all these small areas and side roads, and stopping and seeing cows cross the road, and and I ended up in South Dakota and going to the Badlands based on a suggestion from a friend, and going to see Mount Rushmore. And like, Mount Rushmore is one of those places you probably would never fly to go see. But I'd always wanted to see Mount Rushmore. But once you see Mount Rushmore, 14 minutes later, you're like, good, and you're like ready to leave Mount Rushmore, because it's a rock, and that's it. It doesn't do anything. It just Mount Rushmore's, right? So I saw that, and the journey kept going, and I just kept on thinking, well, I'm going to go a little bit further. I'm going to see something else. I'm going to drive. And then once you get to, like, Iowa, you wake up and you're like, no offense to Iowa, but there's not much in Iowa. I mean, there's a lot of cornfields. There's one day in Iowa that I read 4 books that day, because I was just driving through Iowa and there was no place to stop, really, right? And then I had this idea. I'm like, what if I drove all the way to the East Coast I've never driven coast to coast. What if I go all the way to the East Coast? And so that became this idea in my head that I was going to do. And by
How
this,
many days in with that, Ben, where that idea got to you?
probably like 10 days or 6 days. You know what? I didn't tell anybody I was leaving. And I didn't tell anybody I was gone. And nobody knew when I was coming back. And it was like 2 weeks into it that Erin sends me a text and she's like, hey, so I was gone last week. Are you coming in today? And I'm like, no, I probably won't be in today. And then the next day she's like, hey, do you need anything at the house? Are you coming in today? I'm like, no, I'm good. And then pretty soon she looked at the credit card statement and she's like, you're where are you? I don't think you're coming home today. And I said, yeah, I'm not going to be home for a while. She's like, when are you coming home? I said, I don't know. And I maybe never, I don't know. I'm going right. Well, let me tell you a little bit about my day. So every day I would wake up and I'd look at my phone and I would look for a point on the map and I'd say, well, I'm going to drive there today. And then when I got there, if I liked it, I would stay. And if I didn't, I would find a new place. So I never knew where I was going and I didn't know how long I was going to stay. That was part of my goal, was to not have a plan. So I would have 4, 5, 6 hours of work in the day where I would do calls or conference calls or talk to people, work through problems, and none of which I told people where I was going or what I was doing. And then I would spend the rest of my time listening to books or podcasts while I was driving. I ended up making it through 40 or 50 different books and had some really, really productive time. And then the rest of the time, for 3 or 4 hours a day, every day I would do something. So I'd go for a hike, or I'd climb in a cave, or I'd go fishing, or I'd go to an art museum, or I went and see a movie, or I'd visit and have dinner with somebody that I knew in that area or whatever. So I kind of made it part of my thing. And what's funny is I actually became more productive in 5 or 6 hours on the road than I had been in 14 or 15 hours back home. And I consider myself a relatively productive person in comparison, but I became 2 or 3 times more productive on this trip and on this journey. And Vija, you actually came up with a nickname for me.
I did. Hashtag Road Trip Ben.
Yeah, Road Trip Ben. So why'd you call me Road Trip Ben?
Well, yeah, I have thoughts on that because going back to you being more productive on the trip, as one of your as a person that works closely with you, I would argue that that's your highest and best use was used on the trip, right? You in the day-to-day minutes is not the highest and best use of you as an asset. So for all of you watching, I talked to Ben a lot about he is a primary asset of our company. So I'm constantly focused on how to allocate resources and assets in our company. And so I think a lot, I have a lot of brain space in what's the best way to use our primary asset, which is Ben. And I would argue it is exactly what you did on the road trip. And I loved it. And you were really, really happy. And so I called you Road Trip Ben, not because you were gone, but because it was a frame of mind you were in. And you were in problem solving mode, you were creatively thinking, you had time, you weren't rushed. And I think you probably moved the needle forward. You let people run day to day back at the companies, and I think it was a great success. I want to go back to something you said though, Ben. You said your goal was to not have a plan. And I'm curious why it was important for you to not have a plan.
It was one of the reasons why I didn't tell people on Facebook or anywhere else what I was doing or where I was going, because I didn't want my trip to be about somebody else. And a bunch of people were, if I said, hey, I'm going to be close to, let's pick somewhere, Nebraska, they'd be like, oh, that's only 2 hours from me. You should come see me. I didn't want it to be about that. For this summer, what it was about me being selfish and finding me. It wasn't about me going and trying to see everybody else. So I didn't tell anybody. And I didn't want to have an agenda. Agendas stress me out, knowing that there's this place that I got to be or a time that I have to be there. I just wanted to focus, and you guys should hear this, I wanted to focus on what mattered.
Yeah.
Every conversation I had mattered. And I tried to use my time in such a way that I could move the businesses forward and focus really truly on what mattered. I'll say another thing that was about this trip that I didn't really share was I struggle a lot with health, and I struggle with health on things like body pain and sleeping at night and arthritis and some autoimmune issue and obviously my weight. And one of my biggest struggles in weight has been the excuse that I made about, well, it's because I travel. It's because I have all these business dinners that I have to go to. It's because I live in airports and hotels and that sort of thing. So I made a goal on my trip that I wasn't going to cheat on my diet, and I was going to live a specific strict diet while being on the road, where I didn't have a home or a kitchen, and I only had hotels and gas stations and fast food and that sort of places for me to eat, where I would stick to the diet, because I wanted to remove that excuse in my life that I was too busy to be healthy, because that wasn't working for me. And the end outcome was, I lost 20 something pounds. I'm down 27 today, which is not really impressive because I put it all on, right? So, but it's a journey for me to get back to feeling better, because I realize that people in my life need me to show up with energy and enthusiasm, and they need me to show up focused and feeling good. And when I don't, it affects them as much as it affects me.
Well, you look fantastic, and we've had some comments on the chat about it. And I think Road Trip Ben is actually a state of mind, and we want you to stay. For the record, that was not me kicking him out the door. So Ben, let's dive in. I love, one of the things you and I share is we're both pretty reflective, self-reflective people. And I asked you what your motivation was for doing this interview. And you said to me, you really want to show people, I'm reading my notes because I want to use your words, how they can turn their lives around so that they can head in the direction that they want to, right? So my question to you is, how do people do what you did without leaving on a road trip for 2 months? And how do they achieve what you achieved on this trip? How can you take the lessons from this now and show everybody how to do it with their mindset? I think you have 5.
The metaphor of going right instead of left meant something to me. In fact, I don't have any tattoos, but I almost got a tattoo that said turn right, to remind myself that when things aren't going the way that you want them to go, you have to change something. To me, going left was going home, working the same hours, having the same plan, doing the same problems, getting fatter and unhappier and unhealthier and sadder and all that was. And that wasn't an option to me. I had to turn right. So one of the reasons I wanted to share some of my lessons and thoughts from the journey was because I know that every person that's on the call today has some area of their life that they wish was going better. And continuing to do the same thing is not going to solve that. So I want you guys to think about, how can you guys today turn right? That might be a health decision, or that might be a break, or you might quit your job, or you never know. But one of the scariest things for me today is not failing. The scariest thing in my world would be waking up in 10 years and realizing I'm still in the same spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So you did come up with 5, I guess you culled it down. There's a lot of lessons you learned. You kind of came up with 5 fundamental principles, right? That you now abide by. And that we're experiencing, I think, the positive results of. What's the first one, Ben?
You want to read it to me, or do you just want me to pick one?
No, I'm going to read it to you right now.
It'd probably be the calendar one if I had to start.
Time. That's exactly what it is. You must keep time open on your calendar to think, work on priorities, and refuel. Over 50% of your time should not be blocked.
I spent a little bit of time with some of the people in the industry and people in my world that I care about. And I stopped by and I got to see a few phenomenal people, Adam Hergenrother, Seth Campbell, and Chris Suarez, and Sue Adler.
And I think you recommended to everybody that they climb a mountain with Adam Hergenrother. Isn't that right?
Yeah, don't fricking go hiking with a triathlete like Adam Hergenrother. That's number one rule. But when I met with those people who are all extremely productive, they all asked me the same question, which means we all have the same struggles. And they said, well, how do you get so much done, or how do you manage so many things? And I feel like I was burnt out, and they feel like they were burnt out. And one of my ahas was, I said, Adam, show me your calendar. And he showed me his calendar, and I said, yeah, that was my suspicion. And I talked to Chris and Seth and some of my other friends about this. And what you looked at was all these highly productive and accountable people had 80 to 90% of their days booked. And everything every day was so regimented. And what I realized, one of the ways that I'm able to move things forward is I try to keep 50% or less of my calendar with any appointments on it at any given time. Now, that doesn't mean that some days I won't have a full day class or something that happens, but in general, how do you have room in your life to move the business forward, to move your life forward? So I came up with this rule a while ago, but I wasn't blocking those hours before and after it. So that was my journey from the trip was from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I can have appointments, but from the morning when I wake up until 10 a.m., nothing gets on my calendar. And from 2 p.m. onward, nothing gets on my calendar, because those are the times that I need to have to work on moving my life or my business forward. That's my thinking time. That's my learning time. That's my lead generation time. That's my strategy time, my business planning, right? That's when I get to decide who's important and reach out to them. That's my time. So if you aren't getting the growth that you need in your business or in your life today, I want you to consider creating white space on your calendar. And you might not be able to do it like I am, but maybe you could create an hour or two a day, and then you could work your way up. And people always reach out and say, I know you're busy, and it's probably blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, I only have one appointment tomorrow. No, I am busy. I have plenty of work to do, but I'm not allowing other people's priorities to always become mine.
Yeah. And, you and I both lead a lot of people, and, I specifically lead a lot of team leaders. And, there's probably not a day where they could scrap 50% of it. So I coach them a lot through this. And I was just coaching one of them on this last night. And a good hack that Ben has taught me is, white space can be 5 minutes in between appointments. I think sometimes I'll speak for myself, I just go back to back, right? I'll walk someone out and walk someone in. And what I've gotten better at is, shoving them out the door, closing my door, and giving myself 5 minutes. And white space to me is defined by there's no intention for that time. Even meditation isn't white space. Meditation, there's an intention and a purpose to your time. White space is zero pressure on your brain for anything, right? And that's when you see me checking in on Instagram or Facebook in the middle of the day, it's probably little white space moments. It relaxes me, and then I go shopping. I go on Instagram, and then I see an ad and I buy clothes. So, that is really important though to my day. I cannot scrap 50% of my day, but what Ben has modeled is that, I can at least build in some white space in there, right? Any other hacks, Ben, that you have for that?
See, managers fill their day with things and people that need to be managed. Leaders clear time in their schedule to lead and move the business forward. And we have to ask ourselves the questions, are we being a manager? Or are we being a leader? And when you're busy all the time, you're actually not leading anything for me. You're simply just being a busy manager. And managers are a dime a dozen. And managers make a limited amount of income and have a limited life. And I want people to move into that leadership box. So I came up with what I call my daily plan, and I won't dive into it fully, but a couple steps that I do every night is, number one, I visualize what winning tomorrow would look like. And I'm not talking about this is my task list. I ask myself the question, if I got home from work tomorrow And I gave myself a high five and I said, I freaking won today. What will I have accomplished? What would winning look like tomorrow? And I visualize it the day before. Now, the next thing I do is I look at my calendar for the day or for the week, and I see what can I remove from it. My goal is to eliminate 50% of all the appointments on my calendar and see if I can postpone them or reschedule them, because that creates time for me to be a leader instead of a manager. And then the last thing that I'll add on this list today, Via, is I make a list of my priorities and then I put them in order. And my goal is to work on the first thing, not the 10th thing. I don't make to-do lists. I make, as Jay Papazan taught me, I make a priority list and I start working on the first thing that's most important that are going to move the business forward. And I've learned to be okay with the fact that there's 37 fires in the house at all times, and that a leader will work on the biggest fire that has a chance of burning the house down. And the manager is going to try to put out all 37 at once and end up just being consumed by the flames.
Ben, that leads us so perfectly into your second lesson, which is the best answers are the ones you can act on now. Simple is the secret sauce of our companies. Most of the time you know the answer, but you just don't like it. And what reminded me of this is something you said when, it's focusing on the next domino, not the 10th domino, or even all 10 dominoes, right? So,
yeah, we tend to complicate things to justify our inaction. And my people are probably tired of me saying that quote, but I say it all the time because it's true. I need this before I can do that. As soon as I get all these things done, then I'm going to start, right? And we start coming up with these reasons why we can't take action. And our job as a leader is to simplify things so clearly that we can start and take action immediately on something. It may even be the wrong thing, but at least you'll eliminate it at the end of that day, knowing, hey, that I tried it, it didn't work. Now it's no longer on your list. And when I see people that are stuck in ruts, they're trying to complicate stuff. And I do the same thing. But one of the gifts that I have in my organization is simplifying it down for my people, or what is the first thing that you can do. And even when I started this diet on July 1st before my trip, I said to myself, and I got this from David Goggins, I said, I'm going to do the keto diet for one day. Because I had been struggling. And I said, tomorrow, for just one day, I'm going to follow that. I'm going to have 0 carbs. And I got to the end of the day and I thought, well, I did that and that wasn't that hard. I'm going to do it for one more day. And instead of putting the pressure on trying to lose 50 pounds or trying to save $1 million or trying to hire 10 agents or whatever the thing is that you're working on, I just said, what am I going to accomplish tomorrow? I'm going to follow my diet for one day. And I started keeping track of how many 1 days I had and how many 1 pounds I lost and how many $1 I saved and how many 1 hires I made. And over time you look up, you're like, wow, look what I've accomplished. But a lot of people get stuck and they don't take action because they aren't losing that 30 pounds or they aren't hiring those 10 people or they aren't getting that $1 million and they get so discouraged that they quit. And that was me in many areas of my life. And I just had to simplify it and decide, what would winning tomorrow look like? Because I can't lose 30 pounds tomorrow unless I cut something off, right? I can't get $1 million extra tomorrow unless I steal. But I could get an extra 100 or an extra 10 or an extra pound or an extra 5 minutes in my calendar, right? What would winning tomorrow look like? And how could I simplify it and choose it? So that was lesson number 2.
You know what strikes me about that? Thank you for sharing that. One of the best lessons you've taught me this year is that concept. And I think a lot of us, and let me know in chat if you relate to this, a lot of us get very overwhelmed with competing demands. I do. And I remember Ben and I were sitting in Bo and Kimber Mankitty's, one of their market centers in DC in January. And I was about 5-6 months on the job, and I said, Ben, there's so much going on. We were waiting to go on stage or something, and you go, Via, you want to go to the White House, right? And I'm like, yeah, I want to go to I want to go as far as I can in this role. And you go, look out the sliding glass doors. What do you see? Like, I don't know. I see a pathway. You're like, all right, you can turn right or left. Funny enough, you could turn left or right. And funny enough, I chose right. I remember that. And you're like, choose a direction. I said, all right, I'll turn right. And you go, great. What's going to happen when you turn right? I go, I don't know. I can't see. I can only see through the sliding doors. And you go, exactly. But when you get out of the sliding doors, you're going to see, aren't you? And I go, oh, right. So I might be able to see the White House in the distance sometimes. Sometimes I won't be able to see it. And you go, yeah, and you're going to turn right and probably going to get to the end of the building. We can kind of guess what we're going to see. And then what are you going to do? I go, I don't know. And you go, exactly. You don't know, but you'll know when you get there, won't you?
Yeah. Doors open when you get through those doors. Otherwise, you'll never know. It's a good lesson to think about.
It's huge for me. So that leads us into, I think, another one of your lessons, which is make sure we're always chasing the right things. Our ideal end outcome should dictate our priorities, our focus, and should be represented on our calendar. Now I know you just said that, right? But what do you recommend for all of us to make sure we are chasing the right things and that the right things are on our calendars?
Well, I started thinking about, what am I doing and why am I doing it? And I started seeing my people saying, I got to get to 20 agents, or I got to get to $1 million, or I got to get this and this and this. And making big lists of all these things, and when they aren't getting those things, they're allowing those things to make them depressed, sad, unhappy, or feeling unproductive or whatever. And I started going to them and saying, well, what would those things do for you? How would you feel about that? How would you feel if you weren't able to accomplish that? Who would that affect? And what you realize is that half of the things that we say we want, or half of the things that actually disappoint us or depress us or frustrate us, at the end aren't going to make us any happier anyway. So we need to be careful what we're chasing. Like, I want to be number one. Well, so what? How long is that going to make you feel good? I want to gross $1 million, or I want to have X amount. Most of the time, that doesn't define happiness. I started getting real clear on what does wealth mean to me, and I said that wealth is the ability to do what I want, when I want, with who I want. And that's another way of saying freedom. So what I'm searching for is the freedom to do what I want, with who I want, when I want. But sometimes I get caught up in just trying to gather things or accomplish things or add homes or businesses or people or money or whatever those things to life, but they aren't actually giving me what I really want in life, which is freedom. I want the freedom to choose. I might choose the same thing the next day, but as you saw, I was able to choose to go right for 52 days and 9,000 miles. I was able to do that. And what was cool was, while I was there and driving, I still chose to show up to work and have calls and move things forward. I was just more picky who I did that with and what I focused on in those conversations.
You were phenomenal on that road trip. I think I moved the needle forward more. I got more of your time probably on that road trip than normal. And that leads me into another one of your lessons, which it leads right in, which is relationships matter. Keep relationships with your top people and also their top people, which we can talk about or not talk about, but it doesn't take much time to let your people know that you care. Love and helping them get results are the secret to retention. So, what was your criteria to deciding who you were going to, spend time with on that trip?
Sometimes you can let things like an agent leaving your team, or an employee leaving, or somebody packing up in the middle of the night or whatever, eat away at your heart and soul. And what happens is you divert all your energy to those that leave instead of those that are still there. And I had to be clear that if somebody's going to leave, that's great. I wish them the best of luck. But every moment and second I spend thinking about them from that moment forward, I'm stealing from the people that are still here. And I have to divert my energy to the people that are voting with their feet to be following me on my journey. And I make a very good commitment to my people, and my people will tell you that I'm loyal to them, that I'll do anything I can to make sure that they accomplish their goals and vice versa. And what I started thinking about was who matters to me in my life. And I had one of the more sadder ahas on my trip is I sent a text message to a couple of my partners and friends, and I just said, "How are you?" And I sent 4 or 5 of them, and almost everybody sent me the same message back, and they said, "Good, what's up? What do you need? Am I in trouble? What's wrong?" And I had this feeling of sadness come over me, and I thought, these relationships, these people that I say I care about, they aren't used to me even reaching out and saying, "How are you?" And I had no agenda. I literally just wanted to know how they were. And I had gotten so busy dealing with problems and stuff that the people that I say I cared about weren't hearing from me and hearing the simple message, "Well, how are you? What's going on? What's new?" And that was an aha. Was if you wrote a list down of the most important people in your life, would they show up the most often on your calendar? Would you reserve the most amount of energy for them when you got home? Right? Are you making most of your goals around things that would affect or help them? Or are we spending all of our time and energy and emotions on the people that are leaving, the people that don't show up, the people that aren't accountable? And Vija, as we talk about, the people that come into your world or your day or that call you or text you, and every time they leave with more of your energy than they deposit. We talk about leadership is our ability to deliver enthusiasm and energy to our people. But I say that leadership is one of the hardest and loneliest things because almost nobody says thank you to the leader. Almost nobody asks the leader what's going on. And one of my ahas was the relationships that matter to me are the people that check on me too, are the people that say, "Well, how are you?" They're the people that when we leave a conversation, they leave me with more energy. And if you're one of the people in my world that every time you reach out to me, you're taking a shit in my kitchen, then what happens is that you're leaving me worse off than before you showed up. And at some point, I'm going to start locking my kitchen because I don't want people coming in and pooping in my kitchen. But that's what a lot of conversations feel like, is every time they come to you, they're delivering this pile of crap to you. I want people that show up with some freaking cake and some meat to barbecue, and they're bringing me as much as I bring them. They're not just taking. And that's caused me to as I reflected on my trip, to eliminate some people from our company, to eliminate some people from my life, to put boundaries and borders around some of my relationships, because I realized that they weren't depositing as much as they were withdrawing. And I realized I wasn't depositing as much as I was withdrawing from my important people too, because I was running out of energy and time for them. And that's sad.
I'm curious, did it surprise you how some people showed up?
Explain that.
Well, I was going to ask you if you thinned the herd, and you answered it. You thinned your herd a little bit, based on being gone. But how did people show up once it became evident you were going to be gone for a while? Did some people get complainy? Did some people get whiny? Did some people get needy? Or, did people show up in a way that you expected or that you were surprised about?
Well, I think a lot of people reached out to my dad and other people, and my dad reached out, and everybody was like, Is he having a midlife crisis? Right? Is he okay? What's going on? Or is the company failing? And it was actually quite the opposite. I was getting ready for growth and for excitement and trying to get my energy back so that I could right the ships and keep moving us forward. And I just needed that time to come back and deliver value. And I don't need to disappear like that very often in my life. I needed it then. But yesterday, and I told this story earlier to our leadership group, Vija, yesterday I woke up and I was in a little bit of that mood, because I think we all get that way. And instead of going to work, I went to the beach and I listened to a podcast that Chris Suarez shared with me from Ryan Holiday, called "Stillness is the Path or the Way," his new book. And I listened to it for 30 or 45 minutes until I felt like I got my groove back, like Stella, and then I got back in my truck and I came to work, because I wasn't going to come in a way that I wasn't going to deliver energy and enthusiasm to our people. I needed that break. And for me, it was 45 minutes, and I came back ready to rock and roll yesterday.
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussions recently about this, and everybody watching this and everybody who's going to watch this on replays, everybody goes through funks. It's just part of it, and it can be different causes and different reasons. I think sometimes, well, for me anyway, when I'm going through a funk, I am really wired to handle about 1 million different inputs and stresses, and I'm wired to have a stomach for a high risk situations and a lot of stress. When I get in a funk, it's when I'm not understanding the origin of it, or I'm confused about something, and there's an unfinished loop in my head. And I'm wondering if you were in such a funk that like it needed 2 months to unravel the knot, to get to the origin. Because I think when we get in funks is because we just don't understand what's happening. We don't have our brains, we don't have that white space. And at a certain point, you needed 60 days of white space, right?
Yeah.
Most of us can do this, though, to your point, in 40 minutes at the beach.
Yeah.
Or, relatively speaking, I just had a recent fun week. It took me about a week to get out of something, and you work through it. I call it mental Olympics. You kind of work through it. But
we talked about it. Anybody can have a bad day.
Yeah.
Anybody can have a bad week. But if it gets past a week, you're simply being a victim and you're not making changes in your own life, because nobody's coming to save you. If you're having a bad life or a bad month or a bad year or a bad couple of months, in general, at the end of the day, you got to take ownership of that, and you have to change it. I'll give you a day or a week, but anything past that, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to say, all right, you had your week. Now it's time we're going to change. We're going to make some changes today.
And that's why relationships matter, because I was admittedly, I'll admit it to everybody, I was in a little bit of a funk. And when did you call me? Was it 2 nights? I'm getting my days mixed up. A couple days ago, Ben called me and said, okay, I just looked at your text. It's been a week. Get out of it. He was like, and he just, and he was like, that's time. It's time. You get a week. It's done. And it was fantastic. It was really good, tough love on that one. All right. Your last lesson is don't focus on what might happen in the future or what everyone else is doing in your industry. Become really awesome at being you and stop wasting your time trying to be everyone else. What are some...
I started thinking about
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was spending a lot of time and energy trying to compete with everybody. How do I do the same event that somebody else is doing, or provide the same value, or have the same culture in the team, or get them the same coffee cups that somebody else is giving out, or provide the same feature or tool, or do all that stuff? And comparison will kill you. It also takes you away from the opportunity of being great at being you. At some point, you just have to decide, this is what I do and this is who I am, and I'm going to be really freaking great. Because if you try to be everybody else, you actually end up just being really average and okay at everything. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't trying to be this other real estate brand or this other real estate team or this other mortgage company or this other training event. I'm just going to be good at being me. And I'm going to get my people good at being us. And one of my favorite movies is a movie called Founder. And it's the story of Ray Kroc building McDonald's. And when he started selling these franchises, people were saying, well, this franchise doesn't work. This thing doesn't work. And when he went and visited them, they were freaking selling tacos at the McDonald's. And they were blaming his model, but they were really trading his model like a menu. And instead of forcing people to be good at us, we were taking feedback and insight from all these different people and putting it together. And that's a lot like grabbing some peas from your freezer and some blueberries and some steak from 2 nights ago and a cookie and some spices and a jalapeno and throwing it all into a pot. And all you end up with is a big pot of shit soup. And that doesn't taste good. When you could just stick to a recipe and make small improvements to it, that could be your secret. So if we just sum this up via Road Trip Ben came back with this idea that we had to clear 50% of our calendar, or as much as you physically can, to create room for opportunity, room for priorities. That we had to make sure that the relationships in our lives were bringing us as much as they were taking, and the people that are important to us matter. That we weren't comparing ourselves to other people. We were picking a model and a plan, and we were becoming really, really good at it. And we were focusing on the things and the priorities that really are going to move the ship forward so that we can get out of that rut.
So with all that said and all these great lessons, I want to end it with this question, Ben. What is the most important thing that you know for sure now that you didn't know before your road trip?
That everything in your life that's going good or going bad can change. And when you don't change, you're actually voting with your feet that you're just not going to do anything, and it actually changes for you. But when you do get to a rut, stop going the same direction. Stop going left and go right. And what you'll find is that if you keep going right and you take enough rights, it actually might just lead you home, which is where mine did, back here in Bellingham 52 days later. If you guys are struggling in some part of your life, if it's leadership or wealth building, I want to invite you guys to an event. I'm giving you more early access than I ever have to Win, Make, Give, which will be happening
May 4th through 8th.
May 4th through 7th.
7th, sorry.
In Bellingham. And we've had some amazing speakers and authors, and I put the link in there if any of you guys want to join us for it. It's always sold out. It's a very special event with very special speakers and content, but it focuses on leadership and money. And if you guys want to come, please take the time to register, and we're putting a little early bird discount out there for you today.
You guys, really quick, Ben, because you're not, because I can, Win, Make, Give is amazing. I think it's Ben's signature class. Its primary focus is on wealth building. So win, how do you make money? Win and make. And then, and the goal is so that you can give it away. And I brought my husband. In fact, I've already purchased a ticket for my husband. And just to share with you guys, as an employee, I didn't have to purchase a ticket. And Ben called me and said, why did you just buy a ticket for your husband? And I said, I feel so strongly about this class that I wanted to write a check for however many $100s it was and vote with my checkbook so that I could in integrity tell people I literally paid for a ticket for my husband to come. And I did. You can see the receipt. It is that important of a class. It really changed the trajectory of our marriage as far as our financial discussions and conversations. Our net worth has increased $113,000 since the class, and we now track it together monthly. So, and for those of you from BK team, when Ben was referencing a conversation with an employee, it was me. I texted him one night. I was so excited that it had risen that quickly just from measuring it. And when you measure something, what happens is what you focus on changes. And so by focusing on our net worth, we're probably about a year ahead of buying an investment property, we hope, in Austin, Texas, where my son's going to school. And it's really, I can't speak highly enough about this class. If there is anything you're going to do this year, wipe out time in your calendar and come. And it's a beautiful time of year to come to Bellingham anyway. If you have any teenagers or college age kids, this is a phenomenal class for them. We're not quite hitting spring break, I know. Sorry, Ben, just had to.
Yeah, and the proceeds go to solve homelessness and hunger.
Yeah.
Which is one of my passions. I read a news article last night about this kid that went to his teacher and asked his school teacher when the food people were coming back to fill up his backpack with food because he didn't have any more food at home. And the teacher just started crying in front of the classroom. And I read that article and it made me emotional last night. Like, we don't understand. Like, you think about homelessness and hunger and those sort of problems as problems for lazy people or delinquents or whatever. And maybe some of them are. What I think about is I think about the kid underneath the off ramp with a piece of cardboard over her head and the rain coming down her cheek, sitting there in dirty clothes, waiting for her mom to gather enough money so that they might be able to eat something that night. It's heartbreaking, which is why we put on these events so that we can do great things for charity.
As a mom, it's like physically heartbreaking to hear those stories. Ben, I just want to end with you and I are hiring a really, really special, important person in our worlds. We are just kind of wanted to put out there, if any of you guys are interested in working for Ben and I, we're actively searching for a team leader, which is, if you're outside of Keller Williams, it's a branch manager of a real estate brokerage. And you work directly with both of us. It's a phenomenal group, and it's what I would call a gateway position into many opportunities that we have coming in our company. And I'd love to have a confidential combo with you. So would Ben. You can reach out to either one of us. We're pretty easy to get between social media and having here, I'll give you my cell phone number. And I think many of you have Ben's, but if you or anyone you know are kind of at a time in your life where this conversation resonated and you might want to look at turning right in your career, both of us would love to talk to you. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yep, awesome. Thank you guys for joining us today. I hope you got a little something from hearing about my crazy little road trip and some takeaways that you can implement into your life.
It was amazing, Ben. Thank you for sharing so willingly. I think I can speak on behalf of everybody. We get so much out of that. And you guys who are in our leadership group, let's continue the combo on our Facebook page. Would love you to post your comments and thoughts and questions. And Ben and I commit to engaging a little bit more in that page. All right?
Awesome. See you on the next call. Bye.
Bye.